I'm Eric Loy, and welcome to Eric Loy Interviews. On this podcast, we talk with folks from the VTuber community on their channels, their talents, their stories, where they come from, and their plans for the future. Mr. Aejis joins us. Hi.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I got to get you away from your classroom to get here, but I do appreciate
Happy to be
it.
here.
When did you get started with the VTuber thing?
So it was exactly 1 year ago. I just had my 1 year streamiversary.
Well, cool.
So it would be August of 2023.
So what brought you to it? There are a few people who are doing who are trying to teach people things online. I know you do the gaming too, but why did you decide to do this particular route?
Well, that's probably going to be the big crux of the interview, I'm guessing, is the story, because I had actually been in health. I had been in the health field, primarily in athletics.
Mm-hmm.
I had actually finished a master's in kinesiology, which is movement science.
Right.
I had been in the Army for a few years. That had been my big interest, was athletics, sports, being very active. And then, as I was finishing that up in 2021, that was just the beginning of COVID. COVID had just started. My school wasn't taking it seriously. No one was taking it seriously then. There had been no vaccines. No one had really realized how serious it was going to be.
Right.
And then one day, I was sitting down at home in my office, went up to turn the computer off, and I fell back down in my chair. And then I fell on the floor, and then I realized that I couldn't get back up.
Mm-hmm.
I was young. I was relatively healthy. I was in good shape. I was a athletic guy.
Right.
Turns out a blood clot had formed from COVID.
Oh.
I didn't even realize I was sick.
Oh, man.
But that blood clot broke off from my lungs, where so many people had blood clots.
Right.
And it went to the back of my brain.
Oh.
And I suffered a cerebellar embolism.
Wow.
From which I nearly died. I was in the hospital for some time. I was not sure how much I would recover or if I would recover.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during that time, you have a lot of time to just sit and think. And I thought, well, what do I really want to do?
Right.
With all of my education, with all of my experiences. And I thought, you know what? I want to teach. I want to help people live healthier, happier, longer lives.
Yeah.
If I get out of this, I want to do something that's going to have a lasting impact. So when I got out of the hospital and finished my master's, I decided to go into education. I worked for a while at a community college, getting some experience in administration.
Right.
And then I found that my university, the University of Wisconsin, go Badgers, Big Ten, #1 school of education in the country, by the way.
Yeah. I
found that they had a special. Oh yes, yes. I know you're a Packer fan. We were talking about that beforehand, but
yeah,
the Badgers too.
Yeah,
one of the best universities in the country.
Yep, there are.
I found that
there are a lot.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Go ahead. They are very much one of the top universities in the country.
Oh yes, we love our public universities.
Yeah.
But I found that they were giving what was called a teacher pledge, which means if you pledge to teach in the state of Wisconsin, because of the dire teacher shortage in the country today,
mm-hmm.
they will pay 100% of your tuition.
Ooh,
I had already used my GI Bill, all of my military benefits, really
right.
The only way I was going to be able to pay for university, considering that I had been a high school dropout.
Oh, yeah, it makes you did.
That was going to.
You did manage to give yourself a higher level of difficulty there by doing that.
Yes. I started out as a high school dropout. I had to drop out to start working to support myself at 17.
Mm-hmm.
But after some time in the military, I was able to get out and use my military benefits to go from a high school dropout to a master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
But then I found that I could get coverage for another degree if I went into teaching. So I did.
Mm. And
I went into health teaching.
So health teaching. Then was there a call for that? Did you have jobs open to you once you got out?
Oh yes, absolutely. So health, physical education, math, science, those are considered especially high demand fields. Mm. So there are even special benefits you get for applying to those jobs. Other courses, of course, other subjects are important, but those have severe droughts, severe lack of teachers available right now, and a lot of teachers retiring from the old guard.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of jobs available for those positions. So that's why I got into the teaching part, at least, before I started streaming.
Right. And then how did the streaming come about?
So while I was laid up, I realized, I've never actually watched streaming.
Mm.
It was not something that interested me. I liked playing video games, of course,
Right.
but I never really watched anyone live streaming. I didn't watch any live streaming content. But with a brain injury, especially in the cerebellum, which affects your balance and your fine motor control,
Right.
I wasn't able to play video games. For
Mm.
a while, it was going to take me some time with physical therapy, occupational therapy to get my hand-eye coordination back and be able to do fine work with my hands.
Mm. That's so frustrating.
Yeah, very much so. Yes, your hobbies that you sort of lose.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, as big as that was, not being able to move around as much, not being able to be as physically active, which I've recovered for the most part. But
Right.
being a sports guy, being an athletic guy, being laid up in the hospital for a while was rough.
Yeah.
But I wanted to watch video games at least. I couldn't play them.
Yeah.
I wanted to watch people play my favorite games, and I realized, hey, this is actually a lot of fun. Getting people to experience games that I loved, especially first time plays. Seeing someone experience that vicariously for the first time, I thought, wow, this is actually fun. I'm getting to see it through their eyes because you don't get to do something for the first time again, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I thought this is a lot of fun. I wonder if I could do this. And I had one friend who was a VTuber, Caramel Bandit, who I'm very grateful for his assistance. He's on a hiatus now, but got me into the idea of VTubing. And I thought, you know what, this might be a really interesting vehicle to give people education.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great way to do that. I mean, you if you don't find something on even with the restrictions that are going on with Twitch and they keep trying to screw it up, um, if you don't find something that'll pique your interest, you're not looking hard enough. There's so many things to do, and whether it's doing what you're doing, whether there's people doing artwork, whether there's people doing cooking now has become quite big, or sitting and watching somebody do a playthrough of a video game. There is something there for you, and the chance to learn over it is something that a lot of people need to take advantage of.
Absolutely. If you want to find something there, you will find it unless you're just not looking hard enough.
Yep, exactly. Now, with what happened to the was it embolism? Was
Yes. Yeah.
in the brain?
Cerebellar embolism.
Yeah, it had to be absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, certainly was. Thinking, hey, I'm a relatively young, healthy person. How could this happen to me?
Hmm.
Why would this happen to me? And really wondering, is this it? Or am I going to be limited for the rest of my life?
Right.
All of the education and experience I'd been working towards up until that point, was this all a waste?
Mhm.
Thankfully, it ended up not being so. I can apply everything that I've learned in my new career path.
Right.
But it was certainly a scary, scary experience, something that really woke me up into, like I said, what do I really want to do with my life?
Hmm. Yeah, it's very tough. Years ago I had a very small um, one of those little ischemic type things, and not anything near like you did, but it was enough to slow me down a little bit as far as was my job was speaking. For a little while I had a little trouble speaking, which is not good when it's your job. And some things, there's confusion, a little bit of things going on, but the fear that goes along with it, because that comes out of nowhere, and you didn't
Yeah,
even know you were sick until something happened. Um,
exactly.
uh, do you keep an eye on it every day? I mean, do you try out everything to make sure everything's working when you wake up?
Yeah, there is a little bit of that, anxiety. And whenever you have a cardiorespiratory incident, there's always the possibility that it can happen again. The risk does go up.
Right. Yeah.
But as long as I keep track of it and, I keep up with my doctor's recommendations and I have my regular checkups just to make sure that everything's okay. But it did sort of happen out of nowhere. I had no idea I was sick. I had no idea anything was wrong. But COVID did not discriminate. And I think
No.
people should remember that it's not all the way gone.
No. I mean, I'm glad that my wife and I did get the vaccinations, and we still ended up with COVID, but yeah, we didn't end up in the hospital because of it. And I'm positive it was because we already gotten the vaccinations for it. So that's a whole nother soapbox for me.
Right.
I'm not gonna go there if that's okay. But the
No problem.
the fact is that you've been able to bounce back and be productive is a testament to you and
Thank you.
your strength and because you, let's face it, you could have just said, well, I'm just going to sit and take whatever happens to me, but you didn't do that.
Yeah, you really have to have that mindset because you have to roll with the punches because it doesn't matter how much planning you do. It doesn't matter how much uh, you think you know what's going to happen. You don't.
Hmm.
So you need to have that kind of resiliency.
Absolutely, it can happen to you so fast. At age 50, I was in okay shape for a guy who's been cut open a couple of thousand times, but suddenly by just before my 50th birthday, I couldn't walk anymore.
Mm.
I mean, I had an arthritis that was so bad that my legs were almost, I couldn't stand on them. It was that much. Thankfully, it's gone now, but that can happen very quickly to somebody. And if you don't, you've got to have the fortitude to try and work through it. If you can see a light at the other end of the tunnel, did they give you the light when you were laid up? They say that this could get better, and did you feel that?
I did have an understanding, and they did help me understand that being relatively young with a brain injury, there is more plasticity. You have more plasticity in your brain. You can recover better.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, with a lot of older people, when they have embolisms in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there's not a whole lot of ceiling for recovery.
Right.
Being relatively young, they were able to reassure me, if you keep on your recovery, if you keep doing your physical therapy, occupational therapy, you can get most of your function back. And I did. I have a little bit of balance issues. I'm a little bit unsteady on my feet sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of shake in my hands because of the fine motor control. But for the most part, I've been able to recover. And that, like you said, that light at the end of the tunnel really helped keep me motivated and encouraged to continue on.
That's a great story, and frankly, that's your story right there is one of the reasons why I'm doing these interviews is because people need to know stories of everybody who's doing it, why they're doing it, what drives them. Maybe they can get some guidance or at least a little wind beneath their wings if they're going through things themselves. And it sounds like to me that you have come through with flying colors as much as you
Thank you.
possibly could. Now, once you have gotten on, and you are doing games and the educational things, what type of games are you playing once you're on?
So I started thinking I would just do, the big popular fad games that everyone's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we did things like Elden Ring and Cult of the Lamb.
Right.
But I really wanted to play retro games. I wanted to play indie games. I wanted to play classic games, things that I really was into as a kid, things that I enjoyed growing up, things that, are sort of indie darlings now.
Mm-hmm.
So I play some retro games. I'm currently playing Backyard Baseball,
I saw
which
that.
just got a relaunch.
Yeah.
Just a few days after I started, they gave the big announcement they're relaunching the whole thing.
Wow.
They're going to do, merchandise, a web series, whatever. So I love games like that and first time playthroughs where I get to give people that vicarious experience of seeing someone else play their favorite game for the first time.
Yeah.
And games that I've just never gotten the chance to play, like Minecraft, which I've been doing because students said, I can't believe you've never played Minecraft before.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandson plays, and he doesn't let me play with him anymore because the only thing I could figure out to do was how to beat his animals to death. That's the only thing I could get the keyboard to do. So I'm not allowed to play with him anymore on that. But the backyard baseball is a game that doesn't have any right to be as fun as it is.
I completely agree. They really went above and beyond with all of the characterization, the personality of it, all of the different characters with their very colorful personalities, each so very distinct,
Mm-hmm.
and it is wholesome and appropriate for kids, but it doesn't really talk down to you either, which is fun.
Yeah.
And I think it's really a great example of games of that era, which fits with my whole theme, my aesthetic, my overlays and such are all like Windows 98, classic computing, retro computing, which
Right.
a lot of my audience ends up being millennials. So they appreciate that. They have that nostalgia factor for it, which is why I also cater some of my my lesson stuff to the young adults rather than like say high school age kids like what I teach.
Right. Now, if you do a couple of games with the Commodore 64 logo in it, now you're going back to my territory.
Yeah.
You had to go way back for that. Uh, with the educational streams, what type of feedback are you getting for those?
Feedback has been very positive. I think I've had more interest in that than most of the games that I've played. Maybe it's because I'm not very good at games. I don't know. That could be it. But I think people appreciate that there are other teacher VTubers. There are a lot of people doing educational streams.
Mm-hmm.
But of the VTubers in the world, I think there's about 50,000 English-speaking VTubers. There's a small percentage of them that are educators or teacher VTubers,
Mm-hmm.
but a high amount of them that's just their gimmick.
Right.
They're a sensei or they're,
Right.
whatever their character is. They're not actually a teacher in real life. It's a gimmick, which is
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
When I hear about a half dragon prince, succubus VTuber, I know that's not what they actually are in real life. It's a character they're playing.
I don't know. I've seen some of them in real life.
Maybe they actually are sort of hiding that.
Yeah.
But most of the time, teacher streamers aren't actually teachers, which is fine. It's a gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
It's just window dressing, flavoring.
Right.
There are some that are actually teachers, but they don't teach anything in the streams, which again is fine. That's just sort of the character.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very small number of teacher VTubers who are actually teaching something.
Right.
And I think what's different, what sets us apart, what I would call my little learning community that I have with my viewers, is we aren't just, a teacher VTuber in a class, quote unquote class, like I call my chat.
Right.
We're a teacher VTuber in class, and I actually teach lessons in my subject, and they're full classroom style lessons.
Mm.
They're not a handful of anecdotes or tips and tricks. It's not 5 minutes of talking about something educational. We set aside a half hour, an hour, maybe 90 minutes to actually talk about a lesson subject in full, in total.
Mm.
And I set it up like a curriculum. I'll give topics that lead into each other over the course of weeks. When I talked about a lesson on overstimulation, dealing with the effects of overstimulation, it included elements that I had been able to talk about previously in a lesson on social media, in a lesson on caffeine,
Right.
in a lesson on nutrition. So I've been able to structure it in a way that makes sense and flows into each other. So I think that's what separates us and sets us apart a little bit in our streams, is that this is educational and it is full classroom style lessons. We are still doing it in as much of an engaging and interactive, fun way as we can, but it's actual education and not just a few puff pieces here and there. It's a regular, consistent part of our programming, so to speak. And I think that makes us a little bit different.
It's not the planet of the week is Mars.
Right.
Here's 5 minutes.
Or,
Mars is red.
Stay hydrated.
Yeah.
Get some rest.
Yeah, well,
we're trying to teach people things and do it educationally.
Yeah.
VTubers tend to have lower average viewers than the typical streamer, but they tend to have 6 or 7 times more engagement.
Right.
Because people feel so connected with the character that they see on the screen. So my students can do all kinds of things. They can hit me with spitballs. They can throw desks. They can throw dodgeballs at me and, place clips from Magic School Bus and all kinds of things like that. So the lessons are a lot of fun and people are sort of disguised from the learning aspect of it, but they are learning something. And I think that's, I'm rambling, but, interrupt me at any time.
No. This is absolutely, this is the big thing about what I'm trying to do here is once somebody comes on and talks about something that they're very passionate about, and that is very much a big part of their lives, you bring everybody else with you. There's no reason for me to come in and interrupt you because this is why we're here. I'm going to hear what you got to say. The interviewers don't do that these days. They talk to people and want to get the answers they want out of them. So
yeah, I have noticed that they try to lead people into the particular direction they want the interview to go. But
that's why you got interviewers interviewing interviewers.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be a good.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
But when you talk to somebody, and I imagine that you get a few people in the chat that react negatively, or just say, I don't think that's true. That's completely wrong, although you know it's not. Have you got that? Has that happened to you?
There have been a few instances where people have been, like a lot of people think they know more.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of do their own research, so to speak.
Okay.
When I did a lesson on one of the more controversial subjects, I did a lesson on cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
That's a health subject. That's something I teach about, something I know about.
Yep.
They were like, well, it actually helps me, and so on and so forth. And I wasn't giving the lesson in a negative way.
Right.
I acknowledge the fact that I've tried it. I know a lot of people have, and I actually believe that it should be legalized, should be recreational, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to approach it from the standpoint of, I'm only here to tell you what the science says about the effects,
Right.
what it does, good and bad, and it's for you to make the decision one way or the other. And all I can do when people raise objections is say, here's what I know.
Yeah.
I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. They are, but I'm not going to say that. This is what people who have done hard science research have to say. This really, I think, connects with the lesson I did on supplementation, which is another subject that was oddly controversial. I guess people are sort of connected. They feel very strongly about the supplements they take.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why.
But it's a big, big industry.
Oh, it is. And, with the background I had in athletics, there's a lot of things that I know about the nutritional supplement industry and the fact that it is still mostly the Wild West and unregulated and a lot of pseudoscience and snake oil, all that.
Yep.
But I did a section in that lesson on traditional herbal remedies, traditional herbal supplements. And I made it very clear at the start, a lot of these herbal treatments, traditional, home remedies, all that kind of stuff, these are a part of cultural traditions. They're a part of religious traditions.
Right.
I am not going to decry those. I am not going to say that they're wrong. I'm not going to belittle any of that. Because as a teacher, I have to have some kind of cultural humility. I have to have some sensitivity to that. So I tried to cut that off or head that off from the start and be like, I'm not going to say anything negative about these substances, whatever plants people take and what they use them for.
Yeah.
But I am going to tell you what the science says about each of these. Some of these may not have solid research that says they do anything.
Yeah.
Some of them may have not had enough research. And hey, maybe you're right. Maybe that cultural practice is true in it.
Right.
That substance works and does what it says. And there is some bias in science against studying these, holistic things. There's some cultural bias against it.
Yeah.
Some of the substances simply haven't been studied enough by science.
Yeah.
But hey, I can't lie to you. I'm going to tell you that this body of research says this particular thing doesn't do anything for you and say it might increase your risk of,
something else, even worse,
diabetes or something later on in the future.
Yeah.
I can only give you the facts, and it's for you to decide whether you want to agree with it or not. But it's for you to make your decisions, and I have to give you the facts. Otherwise, you can't make an informed decision.
Right. And I'm going to ask you about a phrase you use, cultural humility, in a little bit. I'll try to remember that. But I want to ask you about this, too. Given the way the world is running today, it's got to be frustrating for you to know that there are a lot of people in this world who, at this point, you could put down 10,000 bits of material saying that X doesn't work, and they can find some guy who doesn't know how to spell doctor to come up with a flawed report that says X does work, and they will believe that.
It is very frustrating, and there's certainly, in particular in the educational field, that's driven even further by sociopolitics and a lot of tension with parents groups and certain other groups who are pushing certain agendas that make a lot of our topics, in particular in health, very difficult to teach. And I mean, obviously, we're just going to have to come out and say it, sex ed. This is an incredibly touchy, difficult subject to deal with because of certain groups in the country. I'm in the U.S., so I'm not sure what the percentage of viewers are, but they probably understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
And that does make it difficult, but we not only have to teach to the curriculum and to what's allowed in the state, but also deal with the backlash from parents groups who don't want certain things taught because they saw something or they read something. And I want to ask them, when they bring up questions, and I want to say, is that true, or did you see that on Facebook?
Well, I
Because
mean,
if they saw something in a pixelated meme on Facebook from a Facebook page called like eaglepatriotnews.facebook.com,
yeah,
and it doesn't matter then if I have 18 NIH studies that say the opposite.
yeah,
And I don't think that's a change in history. I don't think that's something new. I think it is just much more visible, and people who have that kind of ignorance are able to display it more openly
mm.
because things are more, I don't know, decentralized in the information distribution methodology of society right now.
Oh, that's true.
So that's all we can really do is our best. We can teach to the science and let people try to make their own decisions as much as possible.
Yeah.
But in that regard, I have one anecdote. It's, parents think, my kid knows all about that already. Or they say, I'm the only one who should teach my kid that.
Mm-hmm.
Or they say, they're not ready for that. And I look at them and I say, your kid does already know about it, but they know all the wrong things.
Yes.
You didn't. The things that I have seen and heard students say that they believe about sex is like, you can't get pregnant if you do it in the pool.
Right. Yeah.
You can't get pregnant your first time. You
Yeah.
can't get a disease if you have sex in a whirlpool because the heat and the chlorine will kill the bacteria.
Right.
Like, your kids already know all about sex, but everything they know is wrong. And I guarantee you 80% or more of the parents who say, I'm the only one who should teach my kid that. My kid can come to me with anything, blah, blah, blah. To those kids, their parent is the last person they would ever talk to about that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, these days especially. And unfortunately, I live in an area where a lot of times the parents were raised the same way. And you don't really want them telling the kids how to do this because they're already miseducated to start with. You brought up the phrase, the cultural humility. I think that's a very interesting phrase to bring about, and for a teacher, that has got to be a tough thing to deal with too. If you've got I mean, I grew up, and I've told people this, I grew up in the whitest town in America. There were no minorities in my town, so cultural humility didn't exist. I mean, and plus we had all our history in the 70s. And we know practically everything we were taught was not exactly kosher at the time, or now anyway. But today, there's so many different things that are coming into the schools that it's got to be extremely tough for you to tread on those eggshells.
It can certainly be. There is a great deal of not only diversity of demographic, but of opinions and parental background. And when we talk about cultural humility, I think it's not just about what people kind of think about when they think of culture. They think of cultures like, people from different countries. Mm-hmm. People within our country have different cultures. There are cultures associated with neighborhoods, with, denominations of religions,
right,
of socioeconomic status. There are whole cultures within those that should all be understood. And it can be hard to know, well, how does this apply? What does this mean? How do I deal with it? And there are tons of research and a lot of people studying it and people writing all about it. I don't think there's a single way that it can be defined. And it sucks that you have to kind of wing it, but I feel like you kind of have to wing it and deal with things case by case because there are so many different intersecting cultures and issues. And, a person who is from a low socioeconomic status but is from a neighborhood that is a particular way, or from a religion that's a particular way. And then you have, you try to fit people into boxes, but you can't because half of them goes into one box and half of them goes in the other box. Yeah. You have to treat them all as individuals. I think that's really my biggest challenge in cultural humility is there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. You're not going to be able to Google, okay, well, how do I act correctly with a person of this religion, a person of this ethnicity, a person of this religion, because that person is not just that one thing.
Right.
They're not just that religion. They're not just that race. They're not just that demographic.
Right.
There's so many different aspects to each person.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very tough, but true. Also, the VTubing scene has allowed so many people to kind of overcome that a little, and and while there's certainly plenty of areas you can fall into and fall into bear traps here and there, but a lot of people have gotten their chance to express themselves through models, um, through avatars, that type of thing. What made you choose to do it with an avatar?
I thought it would be a lot of fun as a teacher to do the specific character I am, which is a badger.
Mm.
I know that's it's an anthropomorphic looking model. I know people have assumptions about that. That's not actually me. That's not what I am.
Yeah.
But I chose it because it's like a mascot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's my school's mascot, which
Ah.
we talked a little bit earlier about that.
Absolutely.
And I thought it would be very approachable for people, and I think it would people. I want to use this word. I always try to work the same whenever I talk about VTubing.
Mm-hmm.
You love the Muppets, right?
Yes. I
Everybody loves the Muppets.
I grew up in this early Sesame Street Muppets.
Oh yes, and I love going back and watching the old, the Muppet Show,
Mm-hmm.
Kermit and Fozzie and the whole gang.
Yep.
I've heard the Muppets commented on, referred to as the greatest example of kayfabe, if you know what that term is.
Right, exactly. Yes, I do.
Yes.
Very much.
People treat the Muppets as real,
Yep.
even when they're in person dealing with the Muppets.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they see the person holding the puppet and moving the mouth,
Right.
they talk to the puppet. They talk to the Muppet because the kayfabe is so strong. The suspension of disbelief is so real.
Yep.
I feel like people can relate and open up to characters a lot more easily than they can with a real life person because there's so much less expectation.
Mm.
When I'm talking to a person face to face or a person in a video call, I'm making all sorts of assumptions about them. I feel like they're making all sorts of assumptions about me based on how we look. It feels like it's a little bit more stressful. It feels too real sometimes.
Right.
When there's a character, and I don't mean to infantilize people when I say this, it's like, when a therapist is working with a child and they bring out a doll or a puppet for the kid to talk to.
Yes.
It can be very easy and very calming for someone to deal with a approachable, non-threatening character that they can sort of project their feelings on. They can project their impression on.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most comfortable, safe thing that I can be talking to.
Right.
And so this colorful, expressive cartoon badger who is very non-threatening and who has a lovely, smooth voice that I have is very approachable for people, and they feel like they can relate to it. And even if they don't like it, I've had people come in and be like, I don't like your stream, but they don't have anything negative to say about the model because that's just, it's not threatening it. They're more threatening to me for that matter. Like they're the anonymous, faceless, commentator.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was the old thing about me being a talk show host back in the day, is that I used my real name on the air and everybody else was like Bob from Tolono or something. I don't know who they actually are. And so they were anonymous, but I certainly wasn't. So you kind of get that unfortunate feedback that way. But this way, everybody gets to have that little extra buffer, and I think that does help a lot. I'm absolutely thrilled to have met you and to be able to talk about this, and I take whatever hats I have off to you for not only being a teacher in this day and age, but coming back from where you came from to continue and continue to grow and continue to want to give back. That's pretty amazing. That really is.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I hope we get you back here soon because we got a lot more to talk about.
Absolutely. I would love to come back on and talk more, especially about topics that I would love to hear people's feedback on. What do they want to see people teach about and talk about? What subjects do they feel that, they were not primed for, they were not ready for
Mm-hmm.
by their possibly inadequate health education growing up. I didn't get very good health education as a kid.
Yeah, I got plenty of it. I just ended up getting everything you were supposed to get, like flu and chicken pox and all that stuff. I just went ahead and got it. That was my education. Back in the day, we just went ahead and got all the diseases. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll get you on again real soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope everyone out there lives a long, healthy, happy life.
Thank you for listening to Eric Loy Interviews. Join us again next time when we talk to another member of the always interesting VTuber community.